Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you so much for joining us, taking the time to spend time with us today to learn some valuable insights on Power BI. My name is Kelly Kay and I'm the MVP lead for Microsoft. And today we have the pleasure and the privilege of having the fantastic Reza Rad from Radicad. Reza is a regional director and MVP for Microsoft. He has been awarded an MVP award for over 10 years. Super experienced, super knowledgeable. I learn from Reza every day. Today, Reza will be talking to us about his Power BI design patterns. And I know, Reza, usually you don't need an introduction, but I'm going to let you take it away from here. And I'm super happy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the great introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for joining. As Kelly mentioned, this session is about Power BI design patterns. And I'll just do a quick introduction about myself as well. I'm Reza Rad. I'm based in New Zealand. I'm a Power BI consultant and trainer. I work at Radicad. I do some blog posts, videos as well, and I'm author of some Power BI books. One of them is free, Power BI from Rookie to Rockstar. You can download it from Radicad website, and there are some other books as well. My contact information is in the slide. I have one link, like a QR code that you can scan, and that gets you to the slide deck at the end as well. So talking about design patterns in Power BI, first let's start with what is a design pattern or what design patterns are. Design patterns are not just limited to Power BI. In any, let's say, development effort, you pre-build some of the stuff that you can do. In the world of Power BI, we can say a pre-built model template, which is basically like tables, the way that they are related to each other, the way that they are connected to each other. Some pre-written formulas, DAX measures. This works for a very specific use case scenario, let's say budget versus actual, let's say inventory stock on hand scenario or subscription pattern, anything like these. These are for specific use case scenarios, but the thing is that you can reuse these easily in similar scenarios. Like, for example, if you use a subscription pattern, that can work for a ticketing system as well. So you might just copy that pattern, do some changes, minor changes, bring your, let's say, local stuff in it, and then reuse it rather than reinventing the whole wheel, rather than building the whole thing again from scratch. You can use that pattern to do faster development. So a design pattern, basically a let's say, created model. It is not just a model. It might be Power Query. It might be DAX measures as well. All these together that can help in building your solutions. And there are like many different patterns. We can talk about that. Now, for most of these design patterns in Power BI, first you need to consider that in all of these design patterns, a good or let's say a best practice modeling is considered, which is like building a star schema. And I have done another session previously. The video is in Microsoft Power BI YouTube channel with the title of Data Modeling 101. Go ahead and check that later on. That explains the basics of modeling, how these relationships works, what is dimension table, what is fact table, the one-to-many relationship of that, how that builds an entire star schema, which is the best practice of data modeling, right? So that's the base of this models, and I'm not going to the details of that. Again, you can go and watch that video later. Now, talking about design patterns, some of the common patterns are here. I'm not going to explain all of those in this session, but listing some of these, we might do another session later on and explain some of others, but I'll definitely explain some of these today. Like budget versus actual, it's a pattern that explains that you have two different tables your fact tables are in two different granularity. One of them is at the daily level data, another can be in a monthly level, quarterly level, or even in a yearly level. How you can get analysis across these, considering that you are still building a star schema. A stock on hand inventory model. That is a different scenario that is talking about how you handle a snapshot fact table as a best practice rather than creating a big, huge fact table for a snapshot. Then how you can do that with some specific DAX calculation. A subscription pattern talks about having a from and to, or let's say start and end date, and finding all active subscribers, or this can be ticketing system, all open tickets and things like that in those periods, which is again different. Customer retention talks about things such as how many new customers you have, how many lost customers, segmentations, which can be the way that you can group your data on a static or dynamic way. You do those aggregations either through Power Query or DAX. And all combinations is when you want to select all combinations from a slicer, let's say something that like in a skill set, in a recruitment process, you want everyone with the DAX skill, and you have a slicer for the, let's say, a skill set with the DAX skill set and with the Power Query. You have a slicer with both of these items, but if you select that slicer, it only shows any record that has any of these two. So instead of any, it shows you all, right? There are many other patterns to talk about. These are just few I'm showing you as a sample. Now let's jump into some of these patterns and see how they are going to work. The first pattern I'm going to explain is budget versus actual. The main thing about this pattern is that you have two different tables, two different fact tables, that they are in different granularities. You cannot just join them to the same tables that you have. And I start this with opening the demo file for the budget versus actual. Again, I mentioned that you can access all of these materials. There's a link at the end. There's a QR code at the end. You can scan that and get to the this slide deck. And from the slide deck, there are links to blog articles that you can download files from there. So talking about this pattern of budget versus actual. So these are my, let's say, actual tables. If I put the other tables aside. So consider these. These are my actual tables. So I have a sales, reseller sales, sales territory table is a dimension for that, employee table is a dimension for that, date table usually is a dimension for many BI systems. And the way that you generate date table is also you can have a Power Query script to generate it. It's a general purpose date table and product dimension. This builds on a star schema where I have my fact table here and 1, 2, 3, 4 dimensions connected to that. But then imagine this scenario that we bring another table, sales quota in this case. And this is not really a budget, it's a quota, but still it can work at the same concept. The way that it works is that this table is not in the granularity of the sales table. Sales table is in the granularity of monthly. This is in the granularity of quarterly. Now, you can imagine this to be, let's say, in daily level, this to be monthly, quarterly, yearly, right? The main thing is that they are not at the same granularity level. When I get this scenario, a lot of questions that I get is that how should I connect the table that is not at the same granularity of that, especially in the data attribute basis, how should I connect it to a date table? Because my date table is like at the granularity of 1 record per day. One of the questions is that should I create like a aggregated version of this date table at a quarterly level and connect this table to that? That is a possible option, but then you need to write some like different types of calculations to cover that. What I would suggest is to create the date key in your quarterly data. But that date key only points to the, let's say, start of the quarter, end of the quarter. That is, let's say, a signature that you use in your model. You can decide I'm going to use the start of the quarter or end of the quarter. Let me show you what my sales quota table looks like. So as I mentioned, it's a quarterly data. As you can see, the date key is actually a start of quarter. So this is the start of July in 2005, start of October 2005. So in fact, it is a date key, 4 digits for day, 2 digits for, 4 digits for year, 2 digits for month, 2 digits for day. And I can easily connect it to my date table. But then this would be still at a quarterly level information. How you can build such a thing? You can do it easily with Power Query or even with DAX calculated columns. You can usually you have the year, you have the quarter, then you can add a 0, 1 to that, concatenate them all together. That builds a date key. So using that date key, I managed to connect these two. Now my date table and my sales quota table are connected to each other. I can then easily, without needing any calculation, achieve something like this. This is a table visual here that I have every quarter, every year and every quarter. I get the sales quota because the date table can filter this at the quarterly level. So I see what is the quota of each quarter. I get the sales amount of each quarter. This is coming from my fact sales table. This is coming from my fact quota table. And now consider this is like a budget. So budget versus actual would be basically this minus that. And the percentage of that. This all can be very simple calculation. You don't really need to write complex DAX measures for that, right? But the thing is that when you get to this consideration, then there is an important details that some scenarios require. For example, this is at the quarterly level. But what happens if someone intends to look at this data on a monthly? I know that our quota is not a monthly level, but some businesses might require, even with that consideration, to go and look at this in a monthly scenario. Now look at only this part of the visual for now. So I have my sales quota and I have my sales amount. Now this is at the monthly level, as you can see. For every month, I see what is the sales amount for that month, but I don't see the sales quota for many of the months because only this has a value at the beginning of the quarter. Remember, I set that date key like 2005-0701 or 2005-10-01. That means it only shows me a value for the beginning of the quarter. So this has a value, this has a value here, but there are months without having any quota. Now, in fact, they should have, because this value actually belongs to all of these three, or this value belongs to all of these three. So you should write like an expression to calculate these on a monthly level, and that expression can be really simple. Now, one thing I'm showing to you also, in addition to showing this expression to you, is that let me bring that monthly quota. The way that you see right now this pattern is built is only one of the ways that it is built. You can do it in many other ways. You can do it in Power Query or any other methods as well. So the way that I calculated the monthly quota is this. First, I found out what is the date of that record. I use this approach to do that. I get the last date from my date table, which basically gives me the current month in that record, which tells me what quarter it is. Now, from that quarter, I use variables in DAX to build that. From that quarter, I get the start of that quarter. So that gives me first of that quarter. Then I say calculate the sales quota for that first of quarter, right? For example, if I'm in March 2006, my which quarter would be March 2006. Then I say first date of that quarter that would return, let's say, 1st of March 2006, and then I get the sales quota for 1st of March 2006. So for sorry, 1st of quarter is not March. 1st of quarter is if I'm in March, 1st of quarter is January. So it would give me the quota for January, $4,750,000. And then I divide it by 3 because every quarter has 3 months, right? So that gives me a monthly quota, like what you see right now here. And when I have this monthly quota, I can do that budget versus actual again, because I have the actual, I have the budget. This can be done like that. But what about then daily? Daily is going to be another scenario. If you have monthly calculation, that doesn't work for daily. So I can do another calculation for a daily quota. Now for daily, you can't say like divide by 90, because some quarters might be less than 90, some of them might be more than 90. So I use this approach. I first get the date of that current record, then I find the first of that quarter. Let's say if we are in the middle of the March, the first of that quarter would be 1st of January. End of that quarter would be end of March. And then I'll calculate all days within that quarter. Like this is one of the ways to calculate all days within that quarter. Let's say it's 90 days, 91 days, whatever it is. And then this is the same calculation for the quarter, getting the quota of the quarter, dividing it by the number of days that we have. Right? Again, I'm mentioning that this is only one of the ways to calculate it. There are many other ways to calculate it as well. Then you can use this, because this would also work in a monthly level, right? There are some scenarios that it might not work. For example, if you select a period, if you select a week, and that week, part of that week is in one quarter, part of that week is another quarter, then this calculation needs to be changed a little bit. It doesn't work for that, right? But it shows you how the thing works, right? So if I want to build something like this, two tables, two fact tables with two different granularity, I can find a common pattern. I can connect them into that pattern type of things. Like in this case, I connected to the date table, but only to the first of that quarter, to the last of that quarter. Then for simple variance, simple calculations, I could do that even without writing a specific measure. But if I want to go to the lower granularity that one of the tables doesn't have, then I can write the access statements like this to achieve what I want. Now, before I jump into the next example, which is stock on hand, let's see if there is any questions.
Actually, we do. Thanks so much. That was really interesting.
Great.
We have the first one, which is I'm working on a data model and want to create a date file field which updates to the current month on the slicer, not the month which the PBIX file was saved with.
Okay, that is possible through two different approaches. One is through a relative data slicer. You can have a relative data slicer and you can set this to be always as this month. That's one option. There is, however, a little bit difference in this when you publish it into the Power BI service, because the locale or the time zone of Power BI service might not be exactly the time zone of your local. For example, I'm in New Zealand, the time zone of Power BI service is UTC time. In those cases, you can use a date table with offset columns, like an offset for today, and have a data flow process, or let's say Power Query process, that feeds that data into that table every time and check it with today. If this today, it's set offset for 0, for yesterday -1, for tomorrow 1. And then use that as a slicer. I have a blog article about that exactly with the entire script for that date table. That's the way that I say would be good to solve it.
Nice, awesome. There's another question on the enabling the bidirectional filtering on both fact tables and dim tables. Is there a way to do that?
It is, but I'm not recommending both directional filtering, because you can enable both directional filtering. That is, let's say, the easy way, but that is not the best way, because enabling bidirectional would have a significant performance impact on your model, especially when you have too many tables, when you have a large data set. That's one thing. Another thing is that both directional will bring ambiguity. You cannot create both directional everywhere, because sometimes it creates like a circular reference scenario and things like that. So I'd say avoid that. I refer you to go and check that Data Modeling 101 video in Power BI YouTube channel, you'll see why it is not good, what is the way around it, what is the workaround to solve it.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that. We have Shaq who said, who's asking about the direct query to SQL Server. He has an issue with a distinct count. It doesn't work when I try to break up the district count by month. The distinct count works on a card view, but once I break it up by month, it doesn't work and counts distinct values per month. Would I have to create some sort of key table? What's the solution here?
Yeah, I think that's probably something outside of this discussion. I'd take that offline. Shaq, please contact me through any of these means below. I'll be more than happy to help you with that.
Awesome. If bidirectional is not possible with two fact tables, how would one make a filter from one dim table, cross filter another filter based on another dim table?
There are scenarios that you need some kind of requirement. If that kind of requirement is a need, you can do that. You can write, like, let's say, a measure that calculates something from your second dim table based on your first dim table, and it returns only based on the filtering of the first dim table. And then use that as the filter on the visual that shows your second dim table. So basically, like, one dim table would filter another dim table without having both directional. That can work. You can write DAX measures using cross filter or using some other means to achieve that. That's better than creating both directional, because both directional will impact anything. But if you use that, that would be only for that calculation. Again, I refer you to that Power BI Modeling 101 video.
I actually just put the link in there for everybody. So if you wanted to go to that video, please see the link. We also have another question on, do you recommend using analysis services for creating measures to gain performance?
I'd say there is no difference in analysis services or Power BI, because they are basically using the same engine. If it is a performance issue, the performance issue should be investigated. It might happen in analysis services as well. I'd say they are the same type of model. Analysis services makes it more central server rather than making it the performance better.
Okay, awesome. I think that's it for questions now.
Thank you. So let's jump into the second demo. So second one is stock on hand or inventory model. How does it work? Let me first explain what is the challenge of this model. I'll open the Power BI file for that as well, so that I can show it to you. For the stock in hand, the scenario is that you need a table that has like snapshots daily or based on the period that you want to analyze the data, but your actual transaction table is not like that. Let me show you what my table is. I have just one table, inventory table, to keep it simple. This is my inventory table. It has a date field, product, quantity. This is like inventory movement. Like, for example, it says that at this warehouse, to have it simple, all of these happening in one warehouse at the moment. If it is like a separate warehouse, I would have had another column for the warehouse ID or something like that. But imagine this is all in one warehouse. In one warehouse, at this date, 20th of December 2008, this product is added to the warehouse. Only one of these products. Again, at 20th of December, one other product added to this, right? You see, at every day we have some product movement, right? But we don't have every single day. For example, you see between December 20 and January 15, nothing is really happening, right? There's a blank section in between those. Or between, for example, March 15 to April 15, nothing is really happening. If you analyze this data right now, you can achieve visualizations like this. If I just show it to you, if I have the date, I can have it in a matrix with the product ID as the column and the quantity, right? And if I expand it to the next level, so it works just like that, right? This is presenting exactly the same data. It's showing that at every month, at every day that we have a movement, what is that movement, what is the total, and things like that, right? Now, this is not what I want as a inventory stock on hand analysis. The desired output would be something like this. I want to be able to see every single day and the movement, or let's say the stock on hand up to that day. For example, at 20th of December, we had one of these products each added. In 21st, we didn't had any movements, but still, if I query my warehouse and I want to see at 21st, what is my inventory, what is the stock on hand, I should be able to see this, even though there is no movement at this date or any of these other dates, right? And if these things change, like here later on, you can see if these things change, this immediately updated, right? So at any given date, any given period for any given product in any given warehouse, any of these, I should be able to see stock on hand. Now, one of the ways that you can solve this is with a specific type of fact table. We call it snapshot fact table. What is a snapshot fact table? A snapshot fact table looks like this. Now, I have created this as a visual, but this is how a snapshot fact table look like. You'll create one record per the period you want. In this case, one record per day. And per the combinations of products, warehouses, everything that you have. Like, for example, for this date, for this product, we have one stock in hand. For the next day, even though there is no movement, we still add a record here because then later on we can go and find it. And this is all for one product. If I scroll further down, good enough, I should be able to see like one more product as well, right? All of these happening for another product. This is type of a snapshot fact table. You can build it in Power Query. You can build it in some other let's say ETL tools. But the snapshot fact table has a problem. And the problem with the snapshot fact table is that, let me bring my calculator. Let's say you are analyzing 10 years of data. Each year is 365 days. That's about 3,000 records. And you have like 1,000 products, right? That's 3 million. And you have 20 warehouses. That's 70 million records in this table for such a small case. I mean, 10 warehouse and 1,000 products are not that much, or 10 years of data, right? You might even have much bigger range of this. Now, I'm not saying that Power BI cannot cover this. Power BI can cover like billions and trillions of rows of data without any problem, super fast performance. But I'm saying that if you just creating a table this big for analysis of stock on hand, there's a better way to do that. And I'm showing you that way, which you can use it in similar scenarios. So what I've done, I've first calculated a running total. A running total calculation is something you can even use a quick measure to do that. There is a quick measure that gives you ability to calculate running total. You just tell what value you want, like the quantity you want, and what is the field that you want running total based on that, like your date field, and it is going to write the running total calculation, something like this, right? So this is that option. If you use that, will give you a running total calculation like this. As you see, I'm using the default date table in this example, but another way is to use a custom date table, and then you won't need this .date at the end. Right, so what it says that give me the sum of quantity for that running total. Altogether, this calculation is giving me the running total. I'm not going to the details of that calculation, how it is calculated. But for any given date, this gives me the running total. Right, so if I use that in my visualization, it shows me something like this. It shows me that running total. Here you see that it is like 1 at this date. This is the running total value I just calculated, but still there is nothing here. It is accumulating though. Like previously, when I had 3, it was showing only, when I had 2, it was showing only 2. This is not the quantity of that day only. This is the running total. So previously we had 1, Now we have 2. Altogether, now we have 3. So the running total calculation works. The thing is that this running total calculation doesn't return anything for those dates that there is no movement. So I made a very simple change in that running total calculation. With that, this gives me the stock on hand in any given date. How does it work? I use this expression. In this expression, I use a variable first. I get the maximum dates of the date table, which is basically the date of that record. I get that as a variable called current date. This is the same running total calculation. The only difference is that here, instead of the previous calculation, which was using the maximum inventory date across everything, this is using the current records date. So for any given records, I'll calculate the running total, even though there is no, let's say, transaction in that date. With that simple change, with just that simple change, I can get this to work. So here you see the stock on hand column here, that even if there is no movement here, if there is nothing happening here, still this is showing me the stock on hand for that day. If I scroll down, you see that it is all 1. Nothing is happening here, but then at this date, 2 of this product is added, so it becomes 3, and it is showing me accumulative running total, considering that it is happening even on the dates that I don't have any movement. And it works on a product level, it works at any other calculation level. I did it without needing a snapshot table, and this is not a really complex calculation to work with. Again, I'm not saying a snapshot table is bad. I'm saying that there are better ways to do that. This is one of those methods. So let's go and check if there's any questions before the next demo.
Yes, we have 2 questions. The first one is, I have a table that has actual sales amounts and budgeted sales amounts for all weeks of the year, so for every week of the year. I want to create a matrix displaying columns for all of the weeks' actual results. So the week ending, for example, the week ending July 4th on 2020, July 11th, etc. But I only want the budget column to appear once instead of all of the July 4th, July 11th. Unfortunately, the budget is the same value for all of the weeks in the same month, but my tables have a budget column that repeats for all weeks.
So if, let's say, if I understand the question correctly, if you have the budget and the actual in a weekly level, your budget is like just repeated for every week, because it is just like you have the same budget for every week, and you just want to show like one of the weeks, like the first week. It is a possible way to do that. You can write a calculation that only if it is, let's say, the first week of the year, show this budget. But I don't see any problem of like just showing the budget, even if it is like the same budget for every week, because at the end of the day, you are using the budget to compare the actual versus budget. So if I don't understand that correctly, please contact me separately. Otherwise, if you want to, don't show it, just write a calculation that the first one and show that.
Excellent. And then Mike asked, for a fact table with 2 dimensions attached in a star schema, sales reps and customer, I need to add reliable security, RLS. So I add a table that connects to sales reps with O365 accounts and what reps they should see along a bidirectional filter to the sales reps DIM. What would be the best practices to handle the customer table, as the users should only see a subset of the customers that they have sales for?
If you need, let's say, to filter any other dimension tables based on a dimension that you are already filtering based on the row level security, there are 2 ways to do that. One way is to connect your customer table directly to that, let's say, other dimension that is filtering your user sales rep dimension. I don't recommend that way because that might affect other parts of your model. Another way is to filter your customer table directly. You can fetch all the sales rep IDs that this customer been in touch with, and write a calculation in a rollable security expression in your customer table that says, for example, for this customer, give me, the customer ID should be in, and then you have a virtual table that returns the ID of all sales rep IDs returning from there. I have a simple example exactly similar to this. It's called users and profile rollable security, which in that table I go and filter the profile table. Go and check that out in Redcat blog post. You'll find how it works.
I'll go grab that link shortly. We don't have any other questions at this stage.
Great. Thank you. So the next example, which is going to be the last one for this session, is a subscription pattern. Subscription pattern is kind of, in a way, similar to the stock on hand, because it is using kind of the same approach of the snapshot table. But on the other hand side, it is also different in terms of how tables are connected to each other. In any of the patterns that I explained so far, like inventory, stock on hand, or actual versus budget, the main thing in those patterns is that a date or an attribute in the fact table has a meaning by itself. In the subscription pattern, it has a little bit more meaning than just the field itself. This is my subscription table, and this can be like similar in the ticketing system as well. Let's say I have a set of subscription in a website. People come and subscribe. There's a start date and an end date. If they don't have an end date in my scenario, that means they are still an active subscriber. If they have an end date, they are not subscriber anymore, but they have been an active subscriber in this period from this date to this date, right? Your goal in a system like this is to find out in any given date how many, let's say, active subscribers you have, or things similar to this, how much revenue you got from your active subscribers and things like that. The revenue is easy, but how many active subscriber for any given date is a little bit of challenge. The first thing is that you cannot connect date table directly to start and end, because these fields by themselves, they don't convey a meaning. If I connect my date table to the start date, then if I do a visualization, it shows me all subscriptions started at this date. Now, that might be something you are looking for as a visualization, but it's not exactly what we are after to have the active subscribers in any given date. Or another option is to connect it to your end date, which gives you all subscriptions that have ended at that given date, which is not, again, the active subscribers in every given date. Now, this is a system that you see in ticketing system as well. You see a ticket is opened and either closed or not closed. And at any given date, you want to see how many open tickets you have. This can be for HR, like this person employed at this date, hired at this date, haven't yet left the company. You want to see how many active employees you have. This is a pattern that you can use in any scenarios like that. There's a start and end date. So for a model like this, you don't need to connect your date table to subscription table. Unlike other models that we had the date table filtering based on the relationship, the main fact table, in this scenario, it doesn't. Now, you might create it if you are looking for finding all the subscriptions that have started at this date and things like that. You might create that for that, but it doesn't give you the active subscribers anyway, right? So I'll keep it unrelated. Now, when it is unrelated, that means you have to come up with a calculation to filter and calculate the active subscriptions. Before explaining that, there is also one way to do this with a snapshot table. So you convert this subscription into like a snapshot subscription table, which would tell you in any given date, is this subscription active or not? Another day active or not? But that easily can be a table over hundreds of millions of rows, which when you don't really need it, why you should bother creating it, right? If you want to do that with DAX, there's a simple calculation you can use for that. And I have a very simple DAX expression and everything happening in there. I'll explain how this works. So this DAX measure actually do everything to give me the current subscribers. So what I do first is to find out what is the current date in my visual. I'll talk about this part later. I'll calculate what is the current date. Then I use a virtual table concept in DAX. In DAX, when you use a function that creates a table and then use the result of that in another function, this is like a virtual table. This table doesn't really exist in physically in my model. I created virtually only within this measure. So what this table is saying that filter my subscription table, that table that you have seen the data of that, filter that table to find all active subscribers. So who are active subscribers? First, those who have their end date blank. This means that they are still subscribers. Second, if their end date is after current date. That means, let's say today is 10th of July. For many of you, today is 9th of July. I'm in New Zealand, 10th of July. So let's say today is 10th of July. If the end date is 12th of July, this is a still subscriber. But if the end date of this was, let's say, 7th of July, this is not subscriber anymore. So I'm looking at those that their end date either is blank or, this means or in DAX, or their end date is after current date. This means that they are active. There is also another rule as well. Their subscription should have started before today. So today is 10th of July. Their subscription should have started, for example, let's say 1st of July. Their subscription shouldn't have started on, let's say, 15th of July, because then today they are not active, right? So those two combination together as an or, then and, this is and, you can use or and function as well, then and that with this. So I'm saying that this subscription should be started before current date, right? So this gives me a whole table. The thing is that this table is created dynamically based on the current date. That is why we created it in a measure rather than creating a calculated table for that. Then from that table, I get the count rows of subscribers. This is basically count rows of this table, which gives me the active subscribers. Now I return that value. As you can see, the only thing that I consider at the returning is that because my date table might cover, let's say, 20 years, but the whole period of this subscription might be over 2-3 years, I use this if statement to find out if there is any dates outside of that period. I'm not interested in those. I'm only interested in days in this period. For example, if the current date is today or less, I don't want to look at futures because there is no active subscriber, let's say, in a month until I get there to find out. So I'm not interested in that. And if the current date is greater than the first subscription start date, that is why this variable is created. This calculates the very first subscription start date, and I use that to limit my date table. Otherwise, this would have shown like from 2000, right? So based on all of those, I return the active subscribers. Again, I mentioned these codes can be downloaded, all of those. And here is the result, right? So here it shows me that, for example, my active subscribers are changing. You see, they are just like increasing at the period, decrease, increase, and it works just fine. I can even see that by a customer. I can, for example, select a customer. Now, for many of my customers, I have them only like being subscribed. But for example, for this customer, for Rafael, you can see that it has been an active subscriber until, let's say, 7th of March. At 8th of March, subscription ended. Or for example, for this person, have been subscriber, but at 15th of February, unsubscribed, and then at 29th of February, or let's say 1st of March, subscribed again, right? So without having again a snapshot table with a simple DAX expression like that, I managed to achieve the same thing. Snapshot table is another method of doing this. This is another pattern of achieving the same. Now, is there any other questions? I'll just open this one so you can access all the examples.
Yeah, it would be great if you could maybe paste those in the chat as well, Reza, those links for everyone to have. But there are no other additional questions. Thank you. At this time, there's quite a few.
I'm just pasting that over there. But any of you who are watching, like who might watch this video later, you can use this link. That gives you this slide deck, and in the slide deck, then you can click on any of these links to get to the examples with full details, with the video explaining any one of those, with the files, or you can use this QR code that will give you the same link.
Okay, fantastic. We do have one question now.
Sure.
Can we recap with a reminder where these PBIX files are for download? And I think, Reza, you just sent that link.
Yes.
Yeah, and you said for mine, that was Brian. I know, right? But yeah, does anyone else have any other questions or comments? We'll give it a minute for folks to type. I don't type as fast as...
While people are thinking of their questions, these were only like 3 of those patterns I explained to you. In this slides, you'll find like other patterns such as customer retention, the segmentation, dynamic or static, or all combination or and condition in Power BI, things like that. We might schedule, like, let's say, another session later on talking about those, but even if we don't, these are examples you can go and study using this link.
Okay, we have 2 more. The next question is, if it's from Michael. If you want to calculate movement of a particular item, say a serial number, would it be best to follow the subscriber pattern for how long an item is in its particular state?
It depends. If you have something like, if you have state columns, like let's say you have a column that says this is an open state, then from open state, it moves to processing state. Then from processing state, it moves to, I don't know, closed state. And every one of these states has a date. Then subscription pattern is exactly what you should be doing. If you don't have those patterns, then you might go to the like stock on hand scenario to find out how it works, because you should work only with one date if it is like that. So it depends on how your data is stored.
We do have another question. Do we have a pattern for the building a cohort analysis?
Sorry, what is the cohort analysis? I should ask.
A second. That's from Mark. It says, he said, do you have a pattern for building a cohort analysis? Can you explain a little bit more, please, Mark? And then we'll go on to Jen's question, which is, if the subscription is connected to discount periods with start and end dates, how do you include that in the counting, giving counts for discounted and full price?
That is a very good question. It might be a good topic for my next blog article, but in fact, if you have that adds a little bit level of complexity. So beside your subscription table, you'll probably have a discount table that says this product, and your discount might be at the product level or at store level or something like that. This product from this date to this date is on a discount. So that is kind of like another subscription table. It's not really subscription, it's a discount, but it has from an end date. So you treat that with the same way that we did the subscription. So you need a measure to cover that to find out, like, is this product in a discount or not? And then your final DAX measure would be considering these 2 calculations to find the result for that. It would be a little bit more complicated, but it would use the same type of analysis.
Excellent. Okay, is there another way to automatically put a check mark on a month date slicer?
Put a check mark on the month date slicer. I'm not sure what you mean, but if you mean something such as like give me the current month or things like that, there is a very simple way. You just create a month offset. Again, go and check the Power Query script for the date table I mentioned, and you'll find that is really easy. You just set it to the current month and it would be staying on that current month, if that is what you are.
Excellent. Yeah, he said, they said, I have a report that needs to be updated every month with the current month selected. And I think that's what
yes,
the goal
yeah,
was.
that is exactly. You can do that with relative data slicer, with the current month, or with a month offset.
Okay. And Mark got back to us on the cohort analysis. Mark says it's a cohort analysis is a subset of behavioral analytics that takes the data from a given e-commerce platform, web application, or online game, and rather than looking at all of the users as one unit, it breaks them into related groups for analysis. These related groups or cohorts usually share common characteristics or experiences within a defined time span. And Mark also provides the link. Thank you so much for that. That's awesome. The cohort analysis measures user engagements and stickiness over time. That's pretty cool, actually. Thank you.
Great. I'd say that is, like, from my understanding, it's something similar to market basket analysis, but let's say for your customers, something such as, let's say, clustering for your customers. There are some ways you can do that with DAX, but those are all based on some predefined logics. You might say that, like, those who have done this, those who have done this, I group them together. But I'd say best for analyzing things such as these are R and Python, because those are languages that you can use to do those analysis. There are some Power BI visuals that helps you with that as well, like the decomposition tree, like the other visual, which is quite helpful, is the I forgot the name of visuals in Power BI. I need to bring that up. Yeah, the decomposition tree, or the key influencers visual, working with a lot of visuals, forgetting their name. So these are good, like, easy to use if you want to use. Otherwise, I'd say R or Python are definitely the best. You can do things like this with DAX, but I'd recommend those other methods.
Excellent. We have another 5 minutes of time and a couple more questions. How can I default a month slicer to change each month without filtering out the previous months?
Like, you want the month slicer to be showing the current month, but you want also to have the other month as well. Like, you want all the month up until this month, something like that. Unfortunately, we don't have, let's say, a built-in way to do that, but you can write a measure that if it is, like, let's say, this month, or if it is all other previous months, then it returns a value. Use that measure as a filter of that slicer. That way, this will show you only a subset of those months.
Okay. And then Mike responded, if you have a date slicer on the page and the report has a filter to show you the last year, I want the slicer to default to the last 90 days when a user accesses the report. Any way to do that?
Unfortunately, like, defaulting the slicer is not yet an option. Hopefully it will be an option sometime soon. We don't have an option to set a default, but we have an option to filter the slicer. You can use that approach. But if you are only working for a default, there are some, like, workarounds outside of this topic, but there are workarounds. Go and check like default slicer selection. There are some workarounds, but I'd say this would be available sometime in Power BI. I have no time frame.
Right. And Jen's asked, is there a way to log which data user has viewed, like logging which persons have been shown in a given user, to a given user?
Analysis services, let's say Power BI data model is an analysis services data model. In analysis services, you can actually enable logging, and then you would be able to log every single query that user see. For example, if user in a visualization look at specific customers' data, you would be able to see that. But that is not enabled by default, especially if you are using Power BI Pro account. You won't be able to control it. If you use Power BI Premium, then you can go and enable logging, and from that logging in analysis services, you should be able to see that. That's one way of getting those information.
Excellent. And Al asked, or AL, is there a way to default a slicer value based on RLS for each user without creating another slicer that shows options for default or non-default?
The thing about the RLS is that if you define an RLS filter, RLS will actually filter the data. So if I say, based on this row level security filter this data, it filters that data. So your slicer won't show any other data than what they are allowed to see. you won't have the option to say they see everything, but this one is the selected slicer. RLS won't be answering that, but it would be like kind of as a workaround.
Okay, awesome. And we have another question from, Fang. We have a calendar table with a field for the month offset, and the current month is always 0. And we have a slicer on the report page. Is there a way to set the page to always select the months to the current month? I think that's what he was, maybe Fang's following up to.
Right.
Question, yeah.
Yes, you can do that. If you have like you need to change that. Instead of having a field in your calendar. Oh, right. You mentioned that in your calendar you have a month offset, so it is 0 for the current month. It is probably like -1 for last month, -2 for the month prior than that. So you need to just put a filter criteria in your visual slicer, whatever visual it is, and say everything that their offset is less than or equal to 0, because that includes the current month and all months before that.
Okay. We have a question related to Power BI performance. How heavy is the related function in terms of Power BI performance? If I link an element of the dim table that is not linked to a second fact table, is there a different way of doing it?
If you don't have a relationship between two tables, I'd say use a function such as treat_as. Treat_as is one of the really good functions. You can create some kind of like virtual relationship within that expression. There are other ways to do that as well, but treat_as works really nicely. I have like about 5 different articles on how to work with treat_as from the beginning to the end. Go and check those.
Right. And then we have another question. How do I restrict access to Power BI?
Restrict access to Power BI. I guess you mean restrict access, like there are 2 aspects of this. If it means just like people come and see the reports that they are associated with, I say that is like security. When you share a Power BI content, you share it through Power BI apps, and then you can restrict apps to have certain reports. That's one way, sharing the content. Another way is row-level security that says people, when they see the content, when they see the report, they see only part of the report, which is row-level security. Both are possible. There are articles and blogs about that as well. Go ahead and study on those subjects, especially on the row-level security.
Excellent. And I have the security, the Power BI security link, and also the Power BI row-level security link just posted here. And we also have a survey that we'd love for folks to take a moment to fill out, because we love your feedback so we can improve. I think we have 1 more minute, so time for another question. Thanks, Fernando. Does anyone else have another question before we close up the call or finish up the call? Okay, we've got 1 more minute. We also wanted to say thank you so much for spending time with us. We know that you can spend your time with anybody, and we really appreciate you dedicating an hour to listen to the amazing Reza Rad, who I learn from again every day.
Thank you.
You really do teach so much, and it's easy to understand. So we really appreciate you taking the time as well to present.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for everyone for joining. We're at time right now. Thank you so much, everyone.
Right. Goodbye, everyone.